Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Catalog and Cocktails. It's your honest, no BS, non-salesy conversation about enterprise data management with tasty beverages in hand. I'm Tim Gasper, joined by Juan Cicada. Hey,
Tim,
Juan.
how are you doing?
I'm doing really well.
All right. Well, we're taking a little break of having guests, and we're just gonna chat, you and me.
Yeah.
We actually did an episode probably a month ago.
Yes.
I think we were doing like trends and stuff, and I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, let's just go do something like
Yeah,
that.
and it was pretty popular, and we thought it would be worth doing another, and especially in light of the fact that last week you were at the TED conference.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of recap what was going on there, and especially dive into a very honest, no BS, curious conversation about AI.
About AI, because I think that's what's on everybody's mind, and but actually just bring it back and connect it back to like to humanity, which I think is one of the things that we're too obsessed right now in the technology, and what we're also thinking about the impact when it comes to jobs and stuff. And honestly, at least again, talk about the LinkedIn circle all the time. Like, we're focused on technology. We're not thinking about those broader perspectives of jobs, of how it impacts creativity, and how it impacts just humanity in general, and what should we be doing, how should we think about that. Anyways, that's the stuff that's on my mind. And
it's the important stuff, the heavy stuff. So, but the fun stuff too.
For sure.
But before we jump into the meat of things, we've created a little cocktail here. You can tell it's an intense cocktail because there was muddling involved. So this is actually called a Guardian Angel, which is maybe a very interesting and slightly scary name for a cocktail in a podcast about AI. But it's got some rum. It's got some Montenegro. It has some, what's it called? Orgeat.
Syrup.
I always forget the name of orgeat. And then almond syrup, right? And then also some rose water. And it's got lemon and lime and cucumber.
Cheers.
So very tasty. Cheers.
All right. Cheers, everybody. That's a very unique cocktail, something we've never done here before.
And it sounds kind of weird, but it's actually very tasty. So check it out. But All right. Last week you were at TED conference.
Yeah.
Get us into the scene. Get us into the mud.
So, the theme was humanity reimagined, and obviously AI was almost literally in every single talk, and even if it wasn't in a talk, the talks that were not about AI, they were implicitly like, oh, we have to be more human because of AI.
The context of AI being over there was still having an impact.
Exactly. So let's first talk about, yes, AI is everywhere, and it's literally impacting every single thing. And I think all like Eric Schmidt said, his concern is that we are like we're underselling it at this moment to that stage. Like,
which I think is insane. That like the idea that like it's so hyped right now, but we're underselling it. Like that idea is very weird.
So
yeah.
Now, as you can imagine, there's like the spectrum of one side, people being extremely concerned and scared, and like almost the world is going to disappear, right? To the other side, which is like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing in the world, and we are going to be able to create new life and stuff like that, which also kind of seems very scary.
Kind of two extremes.
And then there's two extremes, and then there's like, okay, people who are trying to go find the balance around stuff. So let me just go over Rant and then kind of like
okay. Go for it.
So on one extreme, this talk is already public. So it was the talk by Carol Cadwallador. So she is a person, like I think 7 years ago, she gave a TED talk where she exposed the whole Cambridge Analytica situation. So she actually did that at the TED stage, and that situation basically almost ruined her life because she was completely on the world's eyes, and she's been through so many legal battles, which she now has kind of gone over, and she's won those legal battles because they were she was saying she was lying about all the whole thing. So she's back on the stage, basically saying, look, if that's what happened with AI and social media and the data, what's happening, like this stuff is happening again with AI, and she's like, it is the way how social media and that data was changing how people were understanding politics and stuff. AI is going to do the same. It's going to do even worse. So you have those type of situations, which is true. We cannot deny that type of stuff. They have situations such as like, not if China invades Taiwan, but when China invades Taiwan, and what's going to happen because Taiwan has all the chips, and this is going to, and then what is the reaction? So we need to and AI investment and innovation investment in defense is so slow and so poor that we need to do that outside. So like these are all the things we need to go do. So that's one side, and fuck, even Eric Schmidt saying like, if you have the competition between the good and the bad, the good and the evil, and the good is ahead of the evil, and if as much as the evil will try to infiltrate the good, and they'll be able to kind of like espionage will be able to go deal with that, right? Hackers will be able to go deal with that, but what's left is I'm just gonna go bomb your data centers. I'm like, holy shit. Like, and that's how next world. So like this is one extreme that people are thinking about.
I mean, that's intense. The idea that like the future of warfare, or of one super nation versus another, is who has stronger AI, which we've already talked about. AI kind of as a society, we're talking about AI super intelligence and things like that, right? But then if the way to stop somebody is, and if you can't do it through hacking or through other kinds of means, is to bomb data centers. I mean, that's.
But people are thinking about this stuff.
That's a scary thought.
It is. But in a way, also, I'm like, if that is actually something that could happen, people are actually thinking about that so they can avoid that. It's probably a good thing, too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, this is kind of like the way I'm like.
Thinking ahead.
We got to think about some way,
prepare
right?
for the worst.
If the people are thinking about the worst could happen, then if we're preparing for that, then maybe the worst won't happen. Mm-hmm. So that's like, I think that's also the way how we can start thinking about this, too, right? By the way, just to jump and bring this up to always to our core conversations of data analytics and governance. Well, that's kind of what the governance world is always about. Bad things are going to happen with your data, so I'm going to make sure nothing bad happens. So I'm going to protect it and nobody can touch it, right? So that's literally
traditionally.
But that is one type of extreme you can go do, right? Okay, so that's all that stuff is happening, and then on the other side, let's go talk about how AI. Oh, by the way. Continue on the concerning part. Yes, AI taking away jobs, AI taking away creativity, the art, reusing, like all the stuff that we're going to be hearing more of that.
Stealing from artists.
Exactly, all of that.
Right. Stealing from the New York Times and from publishers writing books and things like that. Right. Destroying the creative process and the livelihood of creatives. Right.
Yeah. So that's one side. Which again, these are all valid concerns, things that we need to figure out how to go address. And we need to be empathetic with the people who are kind of who are in the middle of this. Now, on the other side, we're seeing things that we can, with using AI, how we can. Let's start with like creativity and music and arts and stuff. We can now create new types of movies and media, which has actually been outside of what our even our mental capabilities are capable of, or what we've been capable of. Like, think extremely big and broad, big. We can think even bigger because it's actually possible to kind of imagine these things. So one of an amazing talk was Jason Zada. He's a filmmaker and he's a director. And he's like, if I think about what is my job as a director, I always prompt. That's what I do. That's my job. Is to prompt. And now I can think about bigger, broader prompts without thinking about like physical kind of limitations, location limitations, money. Like this makes it so much easier. So I have the possibility to think about even things even bigger and bigger. Now, all of this to say is like kind of connecting this to the theme of like connecting to humanity. Like we're creating stories and humans connect through stories and we laugh because of stories and stuff like that. So I think that's one kind of seen into the positives. Like we can now really move the goalposts and think super broad around these things.
Yeah, so what we can accomplish from a storytelling standpoint is going to be unparalleled. And I actually love this analogy. I haven't thought of it this way before, but of the director who is talking to the actors and saying, oh, no, let's try that again, but this time do it a little like this. Or working with the editor and saying like, oh, I'm not sure that I like the lighting of this scene. Can we like kind of edit it a little bit? Can we brighten it up? Or, well, I'm not sure I like that song. Like maybe we should try a different song. Oh, okay, now this really gets the mood, right? That process is exactly what prompt engineering is.
Exactly. And I think, and then combining creativity artists with technology is not a new thing. And we go back to Star Wars. Like what George Lucas was doing was super ahead of his time and doing those combinations. And then so there was his name, another TED Talk. One of the guys who's been working in all these movies talked about like Jurassic Park. So Jurassic Park in 1983 was one of the first movies that started to do CGI. And people will again confirm, like, wait, now we're gonna do computers, and I've always created my stock models to go do this. Like, no, no, no. And at the end of the day, how did they do this? It was a combination of both. It was like literally you had the technology was not replacing all these artists. The technology was empowering these artists to go do things bigger and broader and faster than they never thought before. They were still building all these stock kind of these animals. They were putting sensors on them to see how they would move, and then they would be able to go bring them to the computers to go make the realistic the dinosaurs that we see in Jurassic Park in 1993. Like, so this is an example of like
it's a combination of both.
It's a combination of both. So it's really not technology, and I think that's the way of thinking about this, is like it's an opportunity to really push us to be in a more innovative just think really truly not just outside of the box. Is like, imagine if we just moved the goalpost so far away, and now we can get really get uncomfortable by saying like, here are all these possibilities which I never thought was possible, and now I'm going to be going into completely new uncharted territory.
So here's a little bit of the contrarian though perspective on that, right? Is that, well, where did that all go though? Right? Yes, we do have some movies that are created that are superhuman, and there's some degree to which I love, like how some of these movies now they're actually created like just on an iPhone, like, and it's just an iPhone, and like that kind of intimacy that you get is super cool. But then on the flip side, you've got these massive budget Marvel, DC kind of productions, right? And it's the actors, and it's just a green screen. And it's like 100% CGI almost, right? So like, I mean, is that good?
But if we think back, like,
is that what AI is gonna do?
These movies are being built, designed, constructed that way because that's actually what the humans are getting connected with. Like, they are looking for that. They're going to these movies. They're telling stories.
So your argument says that's not a bad thing.
I just think it's an evolution of humanity in a way.
That's fair.
And I think, I mean, yes. So it connects to another way of thinking about this of when things change. So there was another talk about how we live today thanks to the innovations that in the past people allowed them to happen and weren't against them. And that made changes in the past, which enabled the future that we have today. So if we have today some innovation, some new technology, and we're going to be against that technology, we can say we are taking away from the future of our children and our grandchildren. And every generation that lives today lives in a better relation, in a better generation than the past. Because the past actually had to go through some things, and they gave up things for this new thing, for a new innovation, which maybe at their moment screwed up their lives, but has made our lives today in the future better. I mean, yes, the Industrial Revolution was great, but hey, it created kind of fucked up jobs too, in factories and stuff,
pollution,
right?
and
pollution,
building the factory right next to the houses,
exactly.
Right?
All that stuff was bad, and it is still bad today. But if you look at all the positive things that it's been able to have, I think one of the examples is like, imagine going to your dentist today, but you have no Novocaine. So want to go to the dentist? I mean, you still need to go. Like, we live in a better world because we don't have to go deal with like that much pain when we go to a dentist or something. Yeah. So that's another way of thinking about it. Is like, if we're going to halt the innovations happening today, it means that we're taking away from the future of our grandchildren.
I mean, well, and I don't think in any point in history has humanity ever done a good job of ever stopping technological innovation, despite how much maybe they wanted to, right? Technology, going back to Jurassic Park, technology finds a way. I'm gonna pull that in here. Like, there's always a way where it wins, right? Whether people are, kicking and screaming or not. But maybe let's use that analogy of the Industrial Revolution. What did we do wrong there? We probably should have realized a little faster what it was doing in terms of labor abuses and in terms of like community abuses and things like that. At least now we can look at history and not repeat ourselves and say, okay, AI is amazing. But man, is it going to be disruptive? And man, are there going to be some negative externalities in addition to a lot of positive externalities? Why don't we get ahead of it and make sure that we maximize the positive and we minimize the negative, right?
So I think that leads us to like that what's called the narrow, or we're calling the narrow path.
Yeah.
So find a balance. So by the way, some other like really amazing things, like we can go now create genes, and like imagine creating your GPT. You can prompt the creation of some gene sequences that's going to create life. Like that sounds fucking cool, amazing, and super freaking scary. And I'm like, when they're presenting this, I'm like, why the fuck would you want to go do that? And the needed example was, we're going to Mars eventually, and we need to be able to grow food on Mars in a completely different environment. So we need to build life that can be able to sustain it. Like, okay, yeah, I get that. I get, but it's still freaking crazy.
Yeah, should we start modifying the human genome so we can breathe carbon dioxide? Like, at some point it's like, whoa, okay, where are ethics? Where are the lines of ethics?
Exactly. Right? So that brings up. So what is this kind of this narrow, or call it that narrow path? And so one of the great talks there was by Tristan Harris. So Tristan Harris is the guy who did the whole Social Dilemma documentary, and he also gave a talk like 7 years ago, basically saying social media is going to screw up a bunch of this stuff in the world, and we got to be prepared for it. And we didn't prepare for it, and that's why we have so many of the problems that we have about social media today, right? Yeah. Just from like how it's affecting our politics and stuff, but also how it's changing everybody just being so on their devices.
People are depressed, people are violent,
exactly. All of that is happening. So, first of all, it's a call of like what you were just saying is like, look, we need to revisit. We've seen these issues before in the past. Like we really need right now with AI, we have the opportunity to kind of get this right. Now, if you look at it like in two sides of a spectrum, one of them is like, he called it let it rip, like AI for everybody, open source AI, just let everything. But that's the Wild West. Another one is control it completely. And if you take it to that extreme, it's not just only the guardrails. I mean, it comes up to things like countries controlling anything that can happen. What you can go see around that, right? So then you have full control, it become commercial or governmental control. So we need to find that balance in there, right? And I think a lot of these balances are. This is where we need to like get our heads together to figure out what is the path around that.
Yeah. Well, and plus there's external factors too, right? Like one of those being this competition between China and the U.S., right? Like I don't see a world where the U.S. says, "All right, let's buckle down. Let's put this thing in the lab. Let's study it. Let's be really careful and cautious." Because meanwhile, China's going to keep on pushing forward. At least we assume that, right? And we see this as a space race. We see it as a Manhattan Project. We see this as like, we cannot be second in this battle around who has the power of at least artificial general intelligence. And certainly I think most people who understand AI believe it's going to very quickly get into super intelligence, right? So that's the new nuclear bomb, and we don't want to be the last ones to the party.
To that point, that's exactly what Tristan was saying. He's saying, we've gone through these situations before, like nuclear power, and we were able to address this as humanity.
True.
We've gone through issues like the ozone layer. So we've had situations like this where the world has had to and has successfully rallied. I mean, we can say that, but has rallied together around this. Like, this is one of those aspects that we can go do, and I think it's
the world still is here.
The world, yes, exactly.
And in some places, it got better.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a sign of finding that ground, right? Think about like what does accountability mean when it comes to things with AI? Like who gets sued around this? Like we need to be able to think about it and have those types of conversations, like figure that out. And that's something that needs to be regulated. Like there should be not just civil, but like should be criminal kind of repercussions when things like that. Like that's a way of deterring things. And all is to say that at the end of the day, I think one thing that we're realizing now is that we need to get into some new economical models, opportunities around this. Because what Tristan was saying is we always talk about the possibilities, but then there are all these probabilities what will happen. And what turns the possibility into probability are the incentives. So if we look at social media, the incentives were we need to sell, we're going to make more, we sell more, right? And we sell more by selling ads. So we need more eyes on ads. So that means we need to get more people on the platform, and we need to keep them longer. Those are those were the incentives for that. So the question is, what are incentives? how do we need to revisit incentives for humanity?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. You're an economist by training. Let me throw that to you.
So, I think that there are all sorts of economic, let's call them problems and opportunities around AI. So, first of all, I think that as AI evolves, right, there's a very interesting question of what incentives are we building directly into AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, search engines, right, or social media. If the goal is eyeballs and clicks, right, then that's going to mean that AI's goal is going to be to capture your attention. Is that what we want with our AI? Maybe not, right? So that's one thing. It's like, what are we encouraging our AI to do? There was also this article recently, I forgot the name of it, but they were trying to project like the future, the forecast of AI, right? And they were saying that if we try to train AI to, the only thing that's most important is to outdo itself. How can it outdo the next benchmark, Then we're basically training AI to achieve more crazy and difficult and amazing things at all costs. Is that what we want to teach AI to do? To who cares about the humans that get in my way in order for me to continue progress? That's probably not a good thing to train the superintelligence on. So first of all is like the economic incentives of AI itself, right?
Yes.
So then that aside is the economic incentives that we have as humanity around AI, right? And so for example, how do we value humans today in terms of their economic contribution to the world? It's based on, well, what is the sort of the market value of what you provide, which is your wage, right? And then how many hours did you work? And this is sort of how everything works. It's like labor, right? And then, of course, there's technology and things like that that create multiplying effects and things like that, right? Like the investments that you make. But ultimately, humans are, we work, 40 hours a day, 50 hours a day? Or, sorry, week. 40 hours a day, hopefully not a day. You run out at 24.
Exactly.
But 40 hours a week, right? 50 hours a week. When AI comes along, like, this is where there's going to be friction, right? Because humans won't be needed for many tasks. And so if the economic value is hours that humans spend working, then everybody's going to lose their jobs. Everybody's going to make less money. We're all going to be mad at Bezos and Musk because they're making all the money and they own the AI and we don't, right? And that's going to, I've talked to Juan about this sometimes with drinks in hand, right? About like, if we don't fix that, the revolution will happen. Yeah. Right? And hopefully we won't let it get that far. But these economic models become really, really important about humans and what they're working on. And then, how we want to aim where AI is going in the future. So anyways, that's my opening salvo. So, what do you think?
So a couple ideas. I think this is where I'm really excited about the opportunity of how humanity can look at these challenges saying, wow, yes, we can complain and whine about this stuff. And I think the immediate kind of thing we come up with or think about is like, oh, if I have some regulations or some forcing function to stop things, but also like, how do we find a way to kind of balance it, but not just by a regulation, by a rule, but also like an incentive to make it natural, not something you're forced to go do. So a couple of things I want to bring up. Like just, by the way, having these conversations is what really gives me kind of faith back in humanity, saying, look, we are thinking about this, but we're also there are people who are actually thinking about how to make this better. So, so a couple things. One, so a phenomenal talk is by David Fajgenbaum. So he's actually the guy I think there's going to be a movie made about him. He's a doctor who literally got this disease that nobody knew. He's like, you're going to die in 6 months. And everything they tested, nothing. And he just started looking at his own data and then realizing, like, what if there are existing drugs out there that can kind of help what I already have? Basically, can I repurpose drugs? And long story short, he found some drugs that I'm like, he found a cure to his own to his own disease, and he's been in remission now for like almost 10 years or whatever, because he found existing drugs. They're there. And
so the drugs already existed,
but they have never been figured out.
But they weren't for his ailment.
No.
Yeah.
So this guy's like, well, how many? And then he's found so many. He's had, I think it's his whole organization is to be able to find and repurpose drugs.
Did he use AI for that, or
actually,
or just the scientific method, or?
Well, AI too, but also if you go see this talk, he has a big knowledge graph in the center. So.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. So his analogy was like, hey, same way we do recommendations like on Netflix and does that. Well, we created this whole graph about all the drugs and people, and that's how it is. So anyway, so.
The drug recommender.
Yes. Knowledge graph. See? Knowledge graph.
Quite literally.
Knowledge graph are literally on the stage of TED. It's the same. Okay. So, but what is the issue that he has? Incentives. Like the drug companies are not incentivized to go. They're incentivized to go build new drugs.
Right.
And actually incentivized to address like bigger markets. But what about this smaller this another disease which affects a much smaller people? There are no incentives for that. So how do you deal with those incentives? So that's one particular example. Let's say another one that I was looking at my notes because so think about, for example, now the creativity and artists. So the guy who did a Kickstarter, he is proposing a new type of company setup, corporation.
This is the guy who started Kickstarter?
Yes. Okay. So he's like now looking at what is the next problem is artists, right? So first of all, Spotify and all these streaming, they kind of screw. I think we all agree they screw over the artists. And one of the things that's happened now is because their AI, their algorithms are identifying what are the interests that people have. So they're creating music. Yeah. They're creating ghost artists and ghost songs. And guess what? Because they're ghosts, they don't exist. I don't have to go pay them. They're incentivized to reduce costs around this stuff. And therefore they can invent music. So yes, this is not good, right? So what if we actually have now a structure where you can have artists where they can actually now be able to have take money as Patreon, take money as gifts, but they'd be able to sell shares to other organizations who want that. So even just rethinking about the corporation status for artists.
These are like artist corporations.
That's what they're calling it. Yeah. So that's an example of how like we're thinking about this being truly incentivizes. Thinking about like incentives for relationships. So Hamish McKenzie, who is the founder of Substack, he's like, we always have had this whole incentives or an economics of attention. But actually what Substack does is really to focus on the relationships. It's like, I want you to build a community of people who are interested in, I want you to build that community. So they're incentivizing more about building those communities. So it's like, I don't want to. My goal is not to have so many eyes on my thing. My goal is to be able to create really thoughtful relationships. Again, it goes back to using technology, economic models, and at the end of the day, what makes us humans are connections. Anyways, there's like so many different examples like this that I think just gives us the opportunity to really think about how we can actually start thinking about new ways of connecting us as humans, using technology that helps everybody. And again, the incentive of the economic model is a big thing here, which is something that I honestly have kind of been thinking about it little by little, but now I'm like really forced. And it goes back to like even what I bring up is like, why should you invest in semantics and knowledge and metadata and all that stuff? It's because of reuse, but we're not incentivized to reuse.
Yeah, I think we are going to have to figure out how to change some of these models, and it's going to require, I don't think it's going to happen automatically. Like, I think we're going to have to be talking with each other and brainstorming and trying to implement these models, because I think the default, right? I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But I feel like the default is that the companies developing AI will be the ones to get outsized benefits. It's not the artists that are developing AI. Right? So I think this is where it's good that we're having these conversations. Like, don't shy away from the AI conversation. We need to have this conversation because we, the people, are going to be the ones who say, like, no, we want artist corporations. No, we want to incentivize drug. Like, R&D companies are not just going to be like, you know what? We don't really care about profits anymore. Like, let's just let personalized medicine be a thing, and let's repurpose drugs. And, it's like, no. Like, we have to find a way to change the incentives to make sure that it actually is in everyone's interest.
I think so John Mackey said like his talk was having a win-win-win strategy, and I think just people who are right now in leadership positions who have the power and opportunity to do this, it's really in those people's hands to start thinking about how do I make sure that 1 + 1 is greater than 2, 1 + 1 is 3, 4, 10, whatever. Like having that win-win-win mentality. You're saying, yes, we are making profits. And like another example was, we can go. You have brands, and they sell soap. Mm-hmm. I want to sell more soap, but actually, what you can do is like, one thing I can do is like say, we need people to go wash more of their hands because that's going to reduce, right? And then, so we're like, we can tie branding, marketing, selling more with how we can contribute back to humanity around this, right? Those are the types of opportunities that we have. So we're like, we're actually contributing to humanity and we're making more money. I think those things don't happen.
Well, I think there will be some of that. So I think as much as possible where we can lean into the win-win-wins, that's great. But where the win-win-win doesn't emerge, we need to be willing to fight.
Because I think,
but not in a reactionary way, not like in a don't take my job kind of way, right? But in a progressive way that says like we can do something different, we can do something better, and let's make sure we do that.
It gives us the opportunity. I think this is an opportunity right now to really think about innovation as a way that we can. It challenges ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to challenge ourselves. If we're going back to like call it complaining and whining, we're just want to keep the status quo. And it goes back to like it's true. Like think about our kids and future generations. Like we want the world to be better, and not necessarily the way things are today doesn't mean that it's going to be better. Like there's going to be changes, and we don't. And I think innovations that are coming in today, we should really think about like that may be affecting us today, but how is that going to be better for our future generations? And we need to have these conversations around that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it kind of like to start wrapping up here. The other thing is like all of this is just to kind of remember that we're all here to go be humans and tell our stories and connect with other people. And I think that at the end of the day, that the technology is an enabler, should be an enabler for that. We should be seeing that right there. There's just Joshua Bell is one of the most amazing violinists in the world, is giving those presentations about like how we just need to like go back to music. Like classical music is so like his complaint, like people say classical music is relaxing. He's like, no, don't tell me this is relaxing and just plays like Beethoven's Fifth or something like that, right? Another thing that just the Boyan Slat, right? He started the whole ocean cleanup project. It's amazing. They literally have like funnels are going off inside the ocean, are just picking up all the plastics in the ocean. Like this is now happening. Like we're able. Like this is amazing that humans are able to do all these amazing things, and sadly, we don't hear all that stuff in the news, right?
Not enough.
Not enough. We can do that, right? And I think also Angus Harvey has this great talk about how we can. There's all these news which are very negative, but there's all these news which are really positive, and it's really like. It's not that it's saying like ignore the negative, but it's like you also decide which side of the world that you want to be on, which side of the of history you want to be on, and I mean we can all provide that change. So.
Well, and I think to tie that back to, the people who are listening, who are working in organizations, and they're helping with data, they're helping with AI, they're helping with analytics. That you've got an opportunity here to stay ahead of what is most likely going to be the most transformative technological and societal change that has ever happened in the history of humankind, and to try to navigate it towards something that's not just profitable and productive and impactful for your organization, but also that is good for society. And we have an opportunity to work all together to make that happen.
I think this is the opportunity where we get to redefine what we value, how we reward impact, and how we measure success.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we put in AI to the mix of how we do that today. And people are like, whoa! And then like, okay, well, AI is not going to go away. So how do we redefine those aspects?
Yeah, that's right. AI? What's our AI scorecard? Maybe we need to develop that as a society, right? And this is exciting and very cool that you're able to share your insights that you garnered from TED. And
all right. Well,
anything else? Did we miss anything?
There's so much more. Start listening out to the.
Keep the conversation going, y'all. Like, what are you most excited about when it comes to AI, and what are you most concerned about? And
for the things you're concerned about, what are you doing about it?
Yeah. What is your fight?